So we certainly have been challenged and inspired and I think troubled by all that we've heard this morning. And I'd just like to take a minute and deconstruct a couple of things that have been said. First of all, one of the panelists said we need to make sure that we don't confuse early care and early learning. They're not the same thing. And the word "and" always has to go between them. They're completely connected. They're linked in a way that cannot be separated. Because if we have early learning without high quality, comprehensive, good early care, that learning is not nearly as effective. And if we have early care without early learning, the disparities and the opportunity gaps will continue. So please, everyone, leave today with that distinction in your head. They're both absolutely essential. Early care is absolutely necessary but not sufficient. Early learning cannot be effective without early care. And we live in a community that can provide both, that has the will to provide both, that has the belief system to provide both. I'd also like to address the whole idea of achievement gaps. I would just like you to raise your hand if you experience personally an achievement gap in gymnastics. Raise your hand. How about as a long-distance swimmer over 5 miles? Raise your hand if you experience that achievement gap. I'd like to call each of you to action about refuting the idea of birth to adulthood achievement gaps. There is no such thing. Achievement gap says that we have ended achievement. It is the end. I have achieved this or not. What we have are opportunity gaps. I had a person say to me recently in a little bit of a caustic way, "So, I hear you talking about this so-called opportunity gap." And I said, well, let's have a conversation about that. But first, I want you to read 30 Million Words by Danielle Susskind. I want you to understand the research of Hart and Risley that talks about what happens to a child's brain between 0 and 5 and neural pathway development, and then continues all the way into adolescence and even into adulthood. And now it's saying that it continues the rest of our life as we know more and more about the brain. We have opportunity gaps in our community at 0, age 1, age 2, age 5, age 12, age 15. Students can achieve amazing, amazing things in the last year or two of high school if they become engaged and believe in something. And rather than make that, wherever the student is, and that engagement and that acceleration, rather than making that the norm and the routine and the automatic, we write books about it and make movies about it and celebrate it, and then we go back and say, well, you know, that worked in that movie and I'm really inspired, but this is the way life really is. It doesn't have to be that way. We can say, wherever you are, child, we can take you somewhere else. Malcolm Gladwell put out a series of podcasts. If you haven't listened to them, I encourage you to listen to them. One of the podcasts is entitled Carlos Can't Remember. Carlos is a student in a tough situation in life and in schooling in California, and Malcolm Gladwell tells his story. And essentially it is a story of a student who crosses paths with a nonprofit and with some volunteers who take an interest in his learning, and he is able to accomplish great things. What I loved most about the podcast, Malcolm said, this is not an inspirational story. This is a depressing story. Because for every Carlos, there are hundreds and thousands and millions of others who don't cross paths with a benefactor. And this is a story that's been told throughout the ages. Read Charles Dickens. Read literature from around the world. You will see that story. of luck, of fate, of providence that changes someone's life. I think we can change all kids' lives in Montgomery County. I'm absolutely convinced of it. I'm absolutely convinced of it. And the three things that I am most interested in based on this meeting, and I've been interested in for several years, many years actually. The first is universal pre-K for every single family that wants it, regardless of income, regardless of anything else. And I'm not worried. I used to be worried about the state of Maryland. I can't worry about the 1 million children in the state of Maryland. I'm worried about the 159,000 children in Montgomery County because that's all I can worry about right now. We've got to change that. The second thing I'm interested in is pre-K through grade 2 year-round school models. The loss in the summer is too great. Right now, and I'll say this 2 or 3 times in a row so you hear me, so you're not confused, so you don't wonder what I'm saying. Right now, 41% of our elementary children live in poverty. It's not a problem with the children. It's not a problem with the children. It is not a problem with the children because if it were, I wouldn't be standing here. Over a third of our children in the early grades are English learners. It's not a problem with the children. In fact, multilingualism is perhaps one of the most important assets in this world right now. So I'm absolutely committed to working with everyone in this room and everyone in this county about universal pre-kindergarten services for every family who wants it from the public schools. I'm absolutely committed to looking at models and finding a way to do models of pre-K through second grade where we do not experience the tremendous regression of the summer and where we actually have more time. And if you construct it correctly, pre-K through second graders can believe that school is really fun and that it's a good place to be and that it's preferable. I went to the Bell summer workshops at Weller Road Elementary this summer. Those kids were having a great time in mid-July in classrooms studying mathematics. We've got to think differently. The third thing I'm committed to is absolutely being an effective, committed partner with everyone in this room. The public schools cannot do it alone. We can do what we can do, and thanks to the county government and the support of this community, we get a lot of resources, and we have to constantly be thinking about how to use those resources for the most efficient and effective outcomes for children and adolescents. It's got to be focused on them. Public schools can't do it alone. County government cannot do it alone. Nonprofits cannot do it alone. Foundations cannot do it alone. State government, federal government cannot do it alone. Business and industry cannot do it alone. Discovery cannot do it alone. We absolutely have to feel a sense of urgency. So I will ask you now, in one final thought, picture Montgomery County 20 years from now. I'm 59, I'll be 79 if I'm still on this earth. What do I want it to look like for the 20-year-olds who have just been born, the 25-year-olds who are 5 years old in kindergarten right now? What do we want it to look like economically, socially? What do we want it to look like linguistically, culturally? What do we want to look the social fabric of the institution? What do we want our streets and our sidewalks and our businesses and our schools and our residents to look like? We better decide today and work toward that because 20 years will be here before we know it. I cannot believe I'm not 39 anymore. So what do we call you to do? We call you to have this sheet. We call you to talk to everyone about it. We call you to push. We call you to be a little bit aggressive. I loved when one panelist said, I'm going to take this green sheet everywhere. I have been talking about early learning and early care this is my 4th year of having a very public platform to do that in. And it is the thing I'm going to talk about everywhere I go and push for and work on. And I absolutely am convinced that if we feel the sense of urgency and we work together, given the resources and the will in this county, we can do this. Thank you.